Welcome to another episode of Business Over Bourbon, where we pour equal parts business knowledge and fine bourbon to make a truly memorable cocktail. Your bartender for the evening is Corey Perlman, who's a digital marketing speaker and consultant by day, and Jimmy Buffett impersonator by night. That last part's a lie, but a man can dream. And now, put your pencil in one hand and highball glass in the other. It's time for Business Over Bourbon.
And so the conversation that you and I had, Ben, was around Snapchat.
Yes.
And so two things. One is my stance on Snapchat since it came out has been, whoa, slow down, relax. Let's see where this goes, and that's continued to increase in terms of my sort of hesitation due to the fact that Instagram has copied a lot of features that Snapchat has. Also, to my defense a little bit and to my client's defense, their demographic may be a little bit different than other demographics, including the one that we're about to talk about. But the bottom line is I've just been hesitant toward Snapchat for the first time in my life. First social media site that I've been like, not so much. And then I met you. And you showed me what Esquire and you and Esquire were doing in Snapchat. And I was darn right impressed, specifically on how you're finding a way for people to be able to digest the content and still make money for Esquire. So Tell us a little bit about your experience with Snapchat and how Esquire is using it as a social media tool.
Definitely. I'll start first by telling you that when I was a freshman in college, my friends were desperately trying to get me onto Twitter. And my friend, Chelsea Ravesti, I promise that I always call her out by name when I say this, because she called it, but she was like, get on Twitter. Twitter's cool, blah, blah, blah. And I said, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Nice. There's no chance. Got a Twitter, had it a little bit, deleted it. I thought it was so dumb. And I think I had a 1.5-year hiatus before I think my senior year of college. I finally got back on it when I was like, all right, I'm going to try to be like in the lifestyle media. I should probably like have a Twitter account.
Damn, you were wrong.
This place that I live in,
right.
Which is way too high, by the way, here in New York City. Just stay where you're at. Millennials want to work remotely. Do it now. Just do it.
Nice.
Just kidding. It's great here. I love New York City. But Snapchat is interesting too, because it's a similar story with me. Like fast forward, and brands are starting to get on Snapchat, and I'm a social media editor at a huge brand, and I'm like, this doesn't really scream Esquire to me. I'm like, what can we do that's like cute? That's not what Snapchat seemed cute and like something fun that I did with my friends. And it wasn't necessarily something that I saw as like this brand that's geared towards the 35 to 45-year-old man is going to be using. And then we started messing around with it, and then we had some fun with it, and it went fine. And then some of our competitors were on it and doing even more awesome stuff, and we're like, made us want to do even more awesome stuff. And then, all of that happens. But where the game really changed for me was with Discover, which is Snapchat's platform that if, you swipe all the way to the right on your screen and go beyond what you and your friends are sending each other with dogs on your face, it's where publishers have a place to live within Snapchat's universe. And it's a kind of an exclusive situation. They don't just allow anybody to, any publisher to be on Snapchat. And so it was a long process that predated my involvement in it. But eventually, we got down to the wire, and, there's we launched on Snapchat Discover, and we were, one of the many actually Hearst brands that are involved in Snapchat Discover. And so now what do we do? Like, how are we going to have a presence on Snapchat Discover? And I don't know if people out there aren't familiar with this version of the platform. It's essentially a place where brands can find another place for their online content or their magazine content even to live. And you can sort of have an editorial experience in a very snackable way. Everyone knows that if you send a snap to somebody, it disappears in, I think, 10 seconds. Or if you add to your story, it exists for 24 hours. We are a weekly Snapchat Discover story. A publisher story is the correct terminology. So it's basically a weekly magazine that we put out on on Snapchat Discover. Some brands are on it daily, so you'll get daily news from, like, the Washington Post has a daily edition that they put out like a newspaper almost. But you're right that the demographic is completely different than any other platform that we're dealing with. Even for a brand like Esquire, our audience on Snapchat is in the 18 to like late 20s range.
Okay.
And that's where most of the audience exists.
Yeah.
So it's a brand new way to reach a brand new audience. And really, for us, we saw it as an opportunity to reach the future Esquire reader. So the person that maybe doesn't read the website, and I don't know, maybe doesn't even have Facebook anymore because teens think that Facebook's lame. I don't know. I've heard that from a few teens. And so we're getting them to that point where they love the brand and they can consume it in a place where they already are. And we took sort of a different approach to it than any other brand, even to this day, is taking on it, which I'm very proud of and excited about, is that we took something that is the core of Esquire's brand and history in long form journalism and have been translating that to Snapchat, which is like, when I said that I was nervous about Snapchat at first because of the disconnect, I went all the way to the back to why the magazine exists, to the complete future of the brand right now, which is our Snapchat Discover stories, and connected the two, along with a large team that I work with that went through a lot of trial and error to find out what was going to work. And one of the things that we landed on that's working is long form journalism and these stories that we saw perform on the site, both in unique visitors, so people that were clicking through and reading this, and time spent. If we produce a story and the average time spent on it is 5 minutes, that's fantastic. The
Right.
attention span of the internet is small. Yeah.
Right.
So to have somebody spend 5 minutes reading something is a huge accomplishment. And so rather than the experience that you get on a website or even in a magazine where you're reading a story and you're turning the pages or you're scrolling. Now with Snapchat Discover, we have an opportunity to break it up into chapters, and something that you would see as a sidebar or a graphic on the website, you now see as its own thing. So, not to get too dark and bleak about it, but one of our first editions or stories that we rolled out that was highly successful was a story about a New York City or greater New York City prep school here that had a very Penn State-esque child abuse scandal that happened throughout its history. And this football coach, very similarly to Jerry Sandusky, was molesting these young boys for decades. And it's a well-known story regionally, but we published a story about it written by a former alumni who knew this coach and knew a lot of the victims in the magazine. A really, really gut-wrenching story, tough to read, not something that screams like, send this to the teens to read right away. But we gave it a shot on Snapchat Discover, broke it down into 5 different chapters, and then between the chapters offered statistics and graphics on child abuse and child sexual abuse in America, and how often that it happens and who it's happening to, and what did people in local government do to try to stop this, and all these, snackable tidbits that you can retain in 10 seconds and remember, coupled with these 1,000-word chapters that if you really care about like the story that has to do with everything about this, that you swipe up and you read it. And actually, to our surprise, people did that. People swiped up. People spent 3 minutes on every chapter reading it. And we sort of were blown away at this trial that we did that was so successful. It was sort of counterintuitive to what you think. And it's counterintuitive to what you still see on Snapchat Discover. A lot of brands still, are doing listicle type things that probably perform really well. And I think, for that brand, that might be great. We don't have a ton of that on Esquire.com. What we do have a ton of is long form stories. And I'm glad now because we know they perform. And I know I might have sounded a little cynical about millennials in our last question, but I'm just so blown away and pleased that these young people are reading our really high level, highbrow stories on Snapchat Discover. And so that's sort of the approach that we're taking moving forward. in addition to having stories that are very lifestyle focused. Not everything's about something that dark, but we had a story go up about a guy that went viral twice on the internet and saw both ends of the spectrum. He went viral for a good reason. He went viral for a bad reason. The internet loved him and the internet hated him, all within a couple of years of his life. And so we told that story on Snapchat Discover. Our story up right now is about this python hunt that happens in the Everglades every year, because the Everglades are overrun with pythons. And so they bring in tourists and give them cash prizes to hunt the pythons and get them out of there.
That's a cool story. I've heard that. I'm from Florida. I've heard that these things are like 20 feet long and eat like cars and shit. It's scary.
Check that out right now. It'll be up until next Tuesday.
Okay. Deal. That's a deal.
But then we do lifestyle oriented stuff too. Like we had a fitness edition last week that was all different versions of the same thing, which are like workouts to get X, like get 6-pack abs before summer. Workouts you can do within 15 minutes. So it's very serviceable stuff too, because we are still a lifestyle brand and people still look to us for lifestyle advice and direction. So we still want to provide that as well. And that creates a sales opportunity too there, which is like, it's the reason why half the reason why we do anything that we do in the media industry is to make money.
Generate revenue, advertise.
Stories, and we want to do good journalism, but someone's got to pay for the
bills. You got to keep the lights on. There's a couple things I've heard you say. I just want to recap real quick, and then I do want to talk to you about the business model aspect. One thing I really appreciated that you said is that Esquire is really kind of looking forward to the audience that's coming, which I really do appreciate. I think that for companies and businesses that are listening, whether it be Snapchat or Instagram or anything else that comes along, part of that whole lifelong learning thing that you talked about before is just remembering that the economic buyer may be 37 in your business or 47 or 57 today, but down the road, they may be, it's that next generation. And it's like, what is that generation comfortable with? So as brands that want to survive the long term, it's important to look ahead and to plant your flag. It doesn't happen overnight. It's an overnight success, as you guys know. So you got to plant your flag early. You got to stay consistent and build a tribe on these platforms that your future audience is coming to. And the other thing I heard you say that I loved was that Esquire hasn't gotten away from who they are. So you guys said, we are going to create meaningful stories. We're just going to share them in a different way. In a more snackable is the term that you've used, which I love, way in terms of how Snapchat users like to digest content in a snackable way as opposed to a full meal. And, good for you guys to stay true to yourselves, a little bit of, authenticity and integrity there. And it seems to have worked really well for you guys. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
So now, of course, like you said, Esquire, got to pay the bills, so within the world of Discover and Snapchat, how do you guys monetize the platform?
It's really pretty simple. There's throughout a Snapchat story on Discover is 14 tiles.
Okay.
If you can picture like looking at your phone and the size of your phone is a tile that contains information. You swipe through or tap through 14 of those to get to the end of a story where you're prompted to subscribe. In between those, every 3 tiles is an ad that Snapchat sells, obviously, and that we work with them on a revenue share kind of situation. And so throughout an edition or throughout a story, I keep saying they used to be called editions. Now they're called stories. So it's tough to make the transition. But
now, does Snapchat choose the ad that's placed to that reader, or do you guys choose that ad?
In different situations, like if we sell one through our sales team, then that's from us.
Okay.
But at all times there will be an ad. So if we didn't sell it, Snapchat will have sold something.
Gotcha.
So there's always an ad in the edition, and there's three ads throughout every story, every 3 tiles, and it's that simple.
And does the ad change based upon who's reading the story? Or is it the same ad no matter who's reading the story?
It probably changes depending on who reads the story. And
Okay.
my girlfriend, I only know this because my girlfriend Rachel works in programmatic advertising.
Sure. Not your field. I got it.
She is the person that follows you around the internet, knows what you bought, knows what site you were looking at, what products you were looking at, where you've been, what device you've been on. And
Yeah, so if I read this story that you told me to read when I leave here, there'll be an ad for bourbon. There's no doubt about it, right?
there may be, and that it may be because your phone has a microphone in it a bunch of times in this hour that we're going to be talking. So, and that's a real thing. I don't know how all of that works in terms of technology, but it also helps pay the bills for this apartment that I'm sitting in.
Right, nice.
For it as well. I think I'm one of the few people and consumers out there, and Corey, tell me if you feel differently, but like I like getting served ads that are relevant to me. And so I'm down with the whole like creepiness and invasiveness of online advertising. When J. Crew reminds me that I've been looking at something for 6 months and should just freaking buy it, I'm not mad about that. Or, when I'm looking at shoes and somebody serves me, this is all clothing related, obviously, but they show me maybe a different pair that I hadn't seen, like that's cool. Or a new brand that I didn't know about. I found out about blogs and brands and stuff that I still read and follow to this day through ads on Facebook that I get served. So I'm pro following me around the internet. I have nothing.
I think somebody saying I'm pro advertising says a lot about advertising, because if you think about any other advertising story, it's always, I gotta go to the bathroom, there's a commercial on, or, it's another Viagra commercial or whatever, it's like the fact that you're actually somewhat pro ads in your lifestyle says a lot about being targeted on ads. I completely agree with you that I would prefer to be advertised to on things that I'm actually interested in. 100% guarantee. The only thing that I don't like is a little bit of the dishonesty, if you will, of whether or not it's happening or not. And to your point, it is. I'm sitting there talking to my wife about her box garden I just made her, and I get an ad on Facebook or wherever. It's like, it's crazy, man. I mean, it's like, the microphones are listening in, they're just not really saying so. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah. And I talked to Rachel about that a lot, and she knows what's invasive and what's not invasive. And to her credit and her company's credit and all the companies that do it, or at least like the respectable big ones like hers, they know where the line is and they tried really hard not to cross it. So cheers to them for that. But, being aware of that kind of stuff, it helps me in my job too, because like I said, it's a big part of it. It's what pays my salary and what, allows us to do what we're able to do, our advertisers and stuff. And I know how important it is to make them happy. And I know how important it is to, so we might be jumping like way ahead here in the conversation, but another part of my role is working with our branded content editor, which we have a branded content editor. All the Hearst brands have them, who works directly with our sales and marketing team on RFPs that we're sending out or that we're getting for sponsored content, which is the moneymaker in the media industry right now, which is basically Town Branch reaching out to our marketing team and saying like, we want to be on Esquire.com and like we want to have some content associated with us, not just a banner ad or something that pops up on your screen. So we work really hard to find ways to make those things work editorially, and it's a delicate dance, but it takes thinking in an editorial way and having an appreciation and respect for the advertising side of the business as well. It's a delicate dance to go back and forth with, but I think that I can say our Hearst brands do an excellent job of that. I'm really impressed with what I see.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying too. You want to do a mix. You obviously don't want your site to look, to be overrun with sponsored content because it becomes a little artificial or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, when you do have sponsored content, you want to make sure that it's relevant to your audience. You're very picky probably about who you choose. And
it's regulated in a way too. So there are limitations to what we're able to do, thankfully.
Yeah.
That helps keep us honest and which isn't super important.
So, kind of moving toward our third and final segment, last sip, again, I'm really enjoying this bourbon. Actually, it's, the more I drink it, the more it smooths out, I would say, a little bit. And of course, I do put mine over ice. One little tip for our novice bourbon drinkers out there, that you can put bourbon in the freezer. I recently found out. It doesn't freeze. It will be cold. And so if you want to, because I like to have my bourbon chilled, but the one problem obviously with ice is that it obviously waters it down a little bit. You use the big ball, which as well, and that helps with that a little bit. And just a little quick promo, Ben, hopefully you'll be able to listen. The next episode after you, I'm really excited. We're actually going to have a bourbon expert or a bourbon sommelier, or I don't know if they call them that. I think they do, or I may not be pronouncing that right, but someone who knows a shit ton about bourbon on the show next week or whenever the next episode comes out. It's from a local restaurant here in Roswell called Table in Maine. They have every phenomenal bourbon from your run of the mill all the way to Pappy Van Winkle, which is the upper echelon. I think you and I talked a little bit about that at the bar. So we're going to learn a lot about bourbon on the next episode, which I'm super excited about. And
awesome.
And about the restaurant business too, because they run some phenomenal restaurants throughout the city of Hotlanta. So, but I've really enjoyed this conversation so far, Ben, because again, it's about an industry that I don't know a ton about, which obviously Esquire and content production and Snapchat. But I want to get back to content for a second, because I think this kind of, I think a lot of business owners, executives, marketers, maybe people that aren't in as big of a company as you are. And I want to relate a little bit of this information also back to them. And specifically, I think about content and how good you guys are about crafting and picking compelling content, and how we as marketers, whether we're small businesses or big businesses, struggle with content. So from your perspective, how does Esquire create content, pick content, share content? What are some tips that you could share with people listening as they're creating content, best practices, that type of thing, to make it more shareable and that people want to read it? Anything under the belt would be great.
Well, you said it. It's listening. It's the most important thing that I have done in my career as a social media editor is listen. Listen to the data. Listen to your comments. Listen to, and listening sometimes means just looking at numbers, but listen to the data. Everything that we do gets feedback in some way or another. And whether you're Esquire that has 1 million Facebook fans, or you're Steve's grocery store that has 400, like those 400 people are going to be talking to you. They like your page for a reason. Especially if you're a small business, like if people are going to go like your page, it's because they like your business. They like your brand. Like anybody can go out there and say, yeah, I like this magazine, and I like, BuzzFeed and Esquire and the Daily Beast. And I like J. Crew, and I like Vans, and I like Food Network. Like that's easy. If you're going to take the time to like a small business that you actually patronize in your daily life, like those people really care. Those are like loyal followers and loyal customers. And the best thing that you can do is listen to them. If you post about a certain topic often and don't see any sort of return on it in terms of engagement or click through or whatever your KPI is, your audience probably doesn't care about it. And then it becomes a discussion with yourself of, all right, what is the level that I care about it compared to what the audience cares about it?
Right.
So an example from Esquire is that, like, we could write a lot of stuff about Kanye West every week, or, he's been kind of quiet in the news of recent, but like, when he's out there, we could write about him every couple of days.
He's being over trumped, if you will. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, that is exactly it. Well done.
Thank you.
But our audience doesn't respond to news about Kanye West. So we said, you know what? We don't really care that much either. We care a little bit. We like his music, and some of us are fans of him. But like, the juice isn't quite worth the squeeze on Kanye West. News about Donald Trump, like, because you brought it up. Everybody cares about that right now. I think that we could, as we're talking, he could be impeached, or start to be impeached. I'm looking at CNN above us right now every couple minutes just to make sure I don't have to jump on. But everybody's engaged with the political conversation right now. And so you'll see a lot of politics from Esquire.com because that's what people are talking about. That's what people are engaging with. And so that's what we're going to keep feeding them on social. So there's a balance of, there are also things that we care a lot about that our audience doesn't care about that we still post about because we think it's important, like climate change.
Sure.
Well, if we have articles about climate change, we'll still promote them because we think it's important, but our audience doesn't really respond to them. And then there are some things that our audience cares a lot about that we don't post enough about. And so then we have a meeting. It's like, all right, everybody cares about Stranger Things. Like, we like Stranger Things, but not that much. But
how do you know that they care about it? Like, how do you know that? How do you gain that data?
Well, when we do publish stories about it, and the performance, like people start clicking through and people start sharing it, and we're like, oh shit, like this is a thing. People actually care. Like, how do we double down on it? What is the next thing? Who can we interview? Who can we talk to? It's all listening. Listening is key. And even as the transitions happen and new people come in to work at the website, and we're always sitting down in a room as a group and saying like, okay, looking at the data, looking at social shares, looking at traffic to the website, what's working, what are people interested in, and what is the next step? How can we take our coverage further on that? What are people not clicking on? What are they not interested in? And how can we cut that fat out of our workflow? Just from an efficiency standpoint, we don't need to be wasting our time on things that we don't feel that strongly about and our readers don't feel that strongly about. So I know that is very publishing industry specific. But if you own a flower shop and people aren't responding very well to your pictures of roses, but they're responding really well to pictures of daisies, maybe go double down on the daisies and try to think about the way that you're promoting the roses. Maybe there's a way to make roses work that you're not hearing.
Well, there are two things that you said that you may not even know that you said that are very meaningful to small businesses. One is the data doesn't lie. And I think too many small businesses don't monitor the data as well as big brands, and there's no reason not to.
Yeah, you're right.
We have every available tool that you do to be able to track who's reading our stuff, who's clicking on our stuff, who's sharing our stuff, all that. So that's number one. The second one that I love that you said that you guys do, that you're doing right frickin' now, man, is newsjacking. You're literally watching the news, watching what's happening, and that's your job to stay on top of that. The question then becomes the flower shop. I'm gonna put you right in the mode of a flower shop business owner. Okay, so Trump's all over the news, whatever else is over the news. Is it okay, for the flower shop to talk about Trump, to talk about global warming, to talk about the Olympics if the Olympics are on? And how do they do that? Can they do that?
Well, I think we're talking about a couple of different things, like politics. Don't wade into politics unless you cannot live with yourself unless you do it. Like if I'm a conservative flower shop owner and I don't want any business from these damn liberals and and I want to go all like pro Trump on social media, if that's the kind of business you want, that's fine. But it's like a common thing. I think I forget which basketball or athlete said it. It was like, oh, like Republicans buy Nikes too, but like conservatives and liberals, they both buy flowers. So I would be careful there. Sure.
Well,
but
Ben, I just want to say real quick that this show can be bought. So if either a conservative politician or a liberal politician wants to invest in the show, we can be bought. Just so okay, but go ahead.
We're like a quick check away from either being, Charlie Pierce on Esquire.com or Sean Hannity. We'll go either way.
Just let us know. Money talks, man.
But if you wanted to, make during the election, like a flower arrangement that looked like Hillary Clinton and looked like Donald Trump and put that on social media to just, everyone's talking about the election. Everyone's talking about the two candidates. What is our way into that? If that's your way in, like, cool. That I think that's totally fine. And I think that, use the word or the phrase newsjacking. I think that yeah, that's what people are talking about. Somebody asked me, like, I think just today or yesterday, like, and you probably get asked this question a lot. When's the best time to post on social media? Which is a question that I half loathe. But you know, the answer is the time to post about something on social media is when a lot of people are talking about it on social media. Like, you might have a heat map that tells you that Sunday nights is your best time on Instagram. And that's cool because you know to post then. But like, if somebody has a story about something and they're like, when is the best time to post this? It's either right now because it's ready and it's live, or, you know, is there something coming up in the news possibly that this is going to relate to that we might want to peg it to? Like, we talk all the time in my area of the business about like, what is the peg? Like, what's the news peg? Oh, well, Trump's first 100 days are over on Thursday, so we should peg our 100 days content. When is Twin Peaks coming back? Oh, this Sunday. Let's make sure we roll out all our new Twin Peaks content this week and re-promote it on Sunday. It's all like what you said about newsjacking is half of the reason why we do most of the things that we do. It's because of what people are talking about.
Is Twin Peaks coming back, the show?
Yeah.
Really?
It's been revived for, I forget what show, I guess Showtime probably, right? Or no, Netflix.
Really?
Maybe, yeah.
That's awesome, man.
I don't know what network is coming back on, but yeah, it's been 18 episodes they did.
Wow, that's awesome. See, I didn't even know that, man. That's all. I don't have to go online now.
It's some damn good bourbon.
That is some damn good bourbon. Yeah, the other that, well, just to double down on what you said, you were kind to the audience to tell them to steer away from politics or to be weary unless they need to. It just, you know, to stand on my soapbox for 1 second, Ben, 2 bourbons in here, it drives me insane when especially small businesses go out there and talk about their political viewpoint, because you're either going to piss off 51% or 49% of your audience. And I just would encourage anyone who's listening or watching or whatever the case may be, if they have an executive or a team member who does that kind of stuff, if not think about yourself and your family, think about your employees. If there was one client that you pissed off and sent the other direction because of your political postings on social, that's taking food off of your employees' families' plates. So it means a lot to me to be very careful about that kind of stuff politically. That being said, what you said, Ben, about you know, obviously doing it in a way that's kind of funny and cute and not really, you know, picking a side, that type of thing. Or I mentioned the Olympics, for example. We're talking about the flower shop. It's like, come on, guys. If you mentioned Sunday night, I was thinking about, you know, you said, you know, the timing thing. Sunday night may be generally a great time for, you know, ABC Flower Shop to post online. But if Sunday night is the Emmys, then all bets are off. It's the freaking Emmys. You know, So Flower Shop, post about the Emmys. Find a way to intersect the Emmys and your flower shop any way you possibly can.
Yep.
Or don't post at all, right? I mean, is that fair?
Or don't post at all. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. This is a thing that, like, especially because we're a site that has a heavy politics hand, and especially because we have the president that we have and the news cycle that we have, like, timeliness is everything. And being quick and getting stuff out before the news changes is more dire now than it has ever been. We start producing things, and, you know, we write a column, and, you know, nowadays, and we haven't really gotten into this, but video is the name of the game in terms of Facebook. So we try to create as much video from our editorial as we can. So we might publish a politics story and start to produce a video about it. And by the time we finish editing the video, there's been a new development in the saga. And so that timeliness is even more important nowadays and harder to nail down. And you reminded me when you were talking about the Emmys, just that, like, you know, last weekend where we have a feature that we wanted to post, and we were like, maybe Sunday night's the right time to go. But an actual discussion that we're having is like, well, what if something happens with, like, the Russia investigation? Or what if, like, this thing happens and blows up? Or, like, you know, this magazine's also going to release their cover story on Sunday night. What implication is that going to have on how this story is going to perform? It's like timing is all that we think about, but there's also no correct answer because it's all a guess. So I would never say to anybody like, oh, 11:30, of course, is the best time.
Right.
But I can say that, what is the post? Is it a recap of Stephen Colbert's monologue from last night? It's probably best to get it up between 8 and 10 a.m. before everybody's already watched it and seen it.
Right.
Those sorts of general like recommendations, I think, are the best way to go there. And then you still might fail because who knows who Facebook's going to serve it to, or
I think the next time you get asked that question, say, 3 a.m. on Tuesday night's probably the best time, so that everybody posts at 3 a.m. on Tuesday night. Stop like, oh God, it's
just wait for them to like nod their head, like, oh, that sounds weird, but
yes.
you need to know what he's talking about. I'm going to go with it.
I'm going to set my alarm like right now. That's. Oh man. Yeah. So, and we'll edit this a lot, cause there's been so much good stuff here, but I'll make sure to keep it down to an hour. But you did, touch on Facebook Live. So when you guys talk about video on Facebook from Esquire's perspective, is it live or do you guys just post video native to Facebook?
It's both. A little over a year ago, Facebook made it pretty clear that video was going to be an important part of their business model moving forward. And what's important to their business is important to our business because big publishers like Esquire, are partners in a way with Facebook where, they drive a lot of the traffic to our website, and that's our moneymaker. So we want to do things that will work on that platform. Facebook's run by an algorithm. So you're served things that Facebook thinks that you need to see at any given moment. And in addition to that, there's what Facebook wants you to see at any given moment. And right now that's video. And they've made that clear to their publishing partners and to the world. I think if you scroll through your Facebook feed right now, you'll probably see 6 videos to every 10 posts. Peppered in with stuff from your friends and your family and, your friends' kids and maybe a news story, that's probably about politics. But video has been very clearly determined, communicated as a priority. And back then it was live. Live was like the go-to product. We were doing 15 to 20 live videos a month because that they work.
So when you guys went live, how where would you shoot? How would you shoot?
Well, it was kind of, this thing kind of came up out of nowhere for us. And so we're forced to put on our creative hats and think about like, okay, how do we make this work for us? So initially for us, it was a lot of like, bourbon brands pitching us on editorial, but now PR people are starting to think smarter, and they know that Facebook Live is important to brands like ours, to lifestyle brands. And so the bourbon brand that would come to us and say, write an article about our bourbon would now say, hey, why don't we have one of our sommeliers or whatever you call it come on Facebook Live and talk about our bourbon, and we'll do a tasting and we can talk about the notes. And we say, sure, that's a no-brainer. People, Esquire readers love bourbon. So let's bring it to them an expert live. And so we would do stuff like that. And then we started thinking, all right, well, this is sort of like a Facebook, kind of like a network now. So what are ongoing series that we can produce? So we start taking things like a column on the website called Style Lessons, which is a photo gallery of celebrities wearing clothes and our commentary on whether or not we approve of their outfits and what we think they look like and what we think you should emulate and what we think you should stay away from as a reader. And we turn that into a Facebook Live series where our senior style editor and I are on camera and literally holding up pictures of the celebrities and saying like, oh, here's Justin Bieber and wearing a stupid ass outfit again. Like, don't do this. And here's John Legend. He looks great. He always looks great. And here's what's great about him and what you should try to copy off of him, and turn that into a series. And now, a year later, we're shooting it in HD and we have graphics on screen, and it's evolved into this like weekly television series that we're going to be doing.
That's really cool. So that one is also live, or is that record and then post when you guys do those series?
That's the one that was created for live and that we did live for a whole year. And now we haven't actually now. You still got me, Corey?
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit, unfortunately, but yeah.
We're going to add graphics afterward, and treat it like a more of a produced sort of video, rather than
less than live, that type of thing. Well, that's awesome, man. And by the way, I'll edit this. Don't even worry about the stuff that goes on.
No problem.
Not a problem. Dude, like really good info. Like seriously, again, for those of you sticking in with us here, man, like never know kind of exactly where these are going to go, but the content and the social media aspect of here, I mean, really, really good. I mean, as a quote unquote social media expert, and again, I'm a novice compared to some, but learning a lot from you, Ben. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Good, man. I'm glad.
Last question for you, because we'll wrap up. What are just, you've been with Esquire for almost 2 years now, it sounds like, but you've had plenty of social media experience. Talk to entrepreneurs, business owners, marketers, salespeople. What are some just general rules of thumb on social media that people just kind of need to remember? And I'll kind of tee you up on this. One thing I've heard you say is, be ready to pounce. I always tell people that being a perfectionist is the antithesis to a good social media strategy, right? By the time you got a perfect post, the story's over. So that's one thing that I talk about. But what are like some of your kind of like 10 commandments, if you will, on social media?
I would say we already talked about the first one, which is listening and paying attention to the data. And you said something that you articulated in a way I never really thought of, but like every business that has a Facebook page has, for the most part, the same tools that we have as like a top publisher in the world. We might have a little bit more resources to like pull our data and give us more detailed information, but everybody has some level of data they can pay attention to, interpret, and act upon. That is the most important thing of all time, or for a social media presence, not of all time. There are way more important things of all time than that.
Cheers.
Second of all, having a unique and distinct voice. There is, especially nowadays, too many people saying the same exact thing out there. And it's something that how we approach our editorial coverage and how we decide how we're going to talk about things every single day. This is super important to us. You can read the same headline about the thing that happened from 10 different outlets. What do we have as Esquire to differentiate ourselves? And that's our voice and that's our perspective. And I think that any business or anybody that has a social media presence has that opportunity as well. It's like, what is our stance on this? What is our unique interpretation of this news or, this meme or this photo? Like, what are we going to say about this photo that's different than anybody else? Like, and that goes back to brand and having a brand and having everything that you do intersect with that brand. When I worked in my advertising days, there was a graph of some sort that I remember seeing in a presentation. And it was all the things that we did for this client. And everything that we did, if you picture the brand as a sphere, every tactic that we had to go through and pierce that sphere. Because everything that you do has to tie back to who you are as a brand. That's something that's very, very important to all of the editors at Esquire. And I think this should be important to anybody who says that I have a brand and this is my brand. I think those are the top two commandments is be distinct, definitive, and yourself, and listen to the data. And the middle part where those two things mesh is a great post that people share and that people talk about, I think.
That's great advice, man. I mean, I think that visual you created, I mean, it certainly rings home to me is that sphere. And if it doesn't pierce the sphere, then maybe you may need to reconsider what that content might be. And it may be outside your, where your brand, and then the other thing that I would add to what you just said is value. Make sure that you are especially for small businesses, answering a question or being a resource or being of value to whomever your audience is. If you're ever too self-serving, that can be a challenge. People ask me all the time, Corey, should I post this about us and this press release about us? And it's like, yeah, but what do they want to know about, man? What are they interested in? What do they care about? Right? I mean, isn't that important?
There's a level of self-promotion out there that is enticing because we all want to, promote the good news about ourselves. And like, even as a brand, you want to be like, hey, like, we just launched this thing, but like, we just launched this thing is just a news bite to somebody, to a reader. Why do they care? How does this thing impact their life? Like if we just launched this service, that allows you to save $20 a month, whatever, yada, 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 yada. Like that second part that is a yada, yada, yada is the most important part.
Right.
And you see that in advertising as well.
All the time, right?
Save 15% by switching to Geico. There's a reason that's the tagline.
Future sponsor, Geico. Come on. Yeah.
Better way to save.
Well, Ben, I got to tell you, man, it has been just a truly a pleasure to have interviewed you and talked to you. I actually would love to bring you back on at some point. A few months down the road, we're live, people are listening to it. But I have a feeling that this will be one of our more popular podcasts, and so I'm sure that people will want to hear from you again. And dude, we could dive in to some specific social media strategies. We could spend a whole podcast on Facebook Live, which I tried to do in the beginning here, but for the first time in my lifetime didn't work for some odd reason. But
I've been there so many times where it's just like, nothing works or it fails. Like don't feel bad about that at all.
I think you nailed it. That this this whole Zoom thing that I had going in here probably nixed that. But I really appreciate the time, man. Congratulations again on the promotion. And Esquire, is like you said, a powerful brand that's been around for a long time and will be for years to come. Partly because of what they've done in the past, but because you guys have got your eyes on the future, which I think is really important. So congratulations to you, man. I tip my hat to you and say thank you again for being on the podcast. And if you guys are listening and want to stay tuned with us or have a bourbon that you love or a topic that you love, email me, Corey, Corey, at ebootcamp.com, EBOOTCAMP.com. Tell me the bourbon that you want us to taste and or the topic that you want us to discuss, and we'll make it happen. And we'll keep doing this, man. So, Ben, thanks again, brother. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Back anytime.
All right, man. Take care.